Hey, thank you guys so much for being on the Next Steps to Better Days podcast. I'm your host, Adonis Lindsay. Always a pleasure to be joining you guys and even hearing from y'all as well as we just bring some great content, great speakers in to give you some inspiration, some motivation, and some tools that you can use to even dream bigger with your own life. And so I'm excited to have with us in the studio via Zoom today first-time author Cheryl Wyller. She's got an amazing book out, amazing story, and she's got a passion that's close to my passion. It's helping this next generation reach to that next level. So Cheryl, so glad you're on the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm excited
Absolutely.
too.
That was a good introduction, I'll tell you that. There you go.
That's the one. I'm telling you.
There you go.
Having conversations with you prior to this, and I just know you got some great tools here for the next generation. So for the listeners out there listening to this, if you know anybody in that world where they deal with younger people, that next generation, listen, tune in, listen to this. I guarantee you it's going to be an encouragement and blessing to you, and some great tools and resources as well. So before we get into your book, Cheryl, I just want the listeners out there to get to know a little bit more about you. So tell us about you and your background.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I've been in education about 25 years, and I have kind of gone through the gamut, starting in special education, and I have worked in 8 different positions, all in that field, from special educator to reading comprehension teacher, reading specialist, to multi-tiered support and RTI, all these kind of positions that kind of keep me with students who just need extra support, whether it's academic or social emotional. They just need some extra support in one way or the other. So no matter if it was elementary, middle, or high, even college, I just finished my last year at UTC.
You cover it all.
I covered it all.
You covered
So
K through 12 and beyond.
I did. It was actually really cool to see. I did primarily high school, but I have done K through 12. And then to have that opportunity this year to kind of see where it all goes, after the school system is done, and how those students kind of are working in the real world with everything that I hope that we're teaching them, and then kind of see what they look like as adults in college. So that was fun. But primarily it's, an education, and with at-risk students. Got a couple degrees, all as the journey kind of continued.
Yes.
I became passionate in something else, and I'm like, oh, going to get myself a degree in that. And, so I have a leadership degree, and I thought I'd do that. And then I ended up falling in love with the reading part. So I got a reading specialist degree, and, now I have focused a lot of my training and certification on the social emotional. Tennessee is social and personal competencies. So really focusing on those lessons and what I can do to help students with that right now.
Yeah, Cheryl, I love your drive. It's like, you're getting all these degrees and certifications and just more knowledge. And then you reached a place to bring us here today to talk about the book that you wrote. And I think that just really echoes, once again, your passion for this next generation, because all the knowledge that you had to do, all the work you had to put in to get to where you are. And, Cheryl, when I said earlier, you covered K through 12 and beyond. In your journey of all that, working with different age groups, did you find anything that was like an underlining common thread within those different age groups? Because so many times we think, okay, they're too young to even understand that, and we'll catch them when they get to this age. But did you find anything that's like there's no barriers with kids need today?
There are no barriers, and that goes from the reading comprehension part that I focused on all the way to that social emotional part. And in all honesty, the majority of my time was spent in high school. And, I was seeing these students, and they were coming in with these needs, whether they were something at home or just the academic, or home was fantastic, but they were struggling with the social part at school, or anxiety and depression, like all of these things that we are struggling with. And I dealt with it year after year, day after day. And when we moved, I actually started my career in Illinois, and about halfway through, we moved to Tennessee. So we kind of took a step back. And when I got here, I was like, okay, like I want to understand the whole school system. So
Yeah.
I went down to elementary and I'm like, we're gonna learn about Tennessee from the ground up. And that is when I
Awesome.
really figured out like, oh, it's not just, students with learning disabilities that are struggling with reading, which is what my background had been up to that point.
Mhm.
These kids are struggling in different areas, reading comprehension being one of them, very early, and different
Wow.
things we can do to catch it. And same thing with that social emotional piece. Do I think it's too early to cover any of it? Absolutely not. My poor kids have been my guinea pigs. My own personal children have been my guinea
They're
pigs.
like,
I
Mom,
started,
no, no.
oh my gosh, I'll never forget my first focus group, I like to call it, but it's not really. It's really just pulling my kids, feeding their friends pizza,
There you
and
go.
then like kind of going over some social emotional topics and like things I wanted to bring to the elementary school, but I didn't know. And my kids, when I started that, they were in first and third
Oh,
grade. And I
wow.
mean, so my son and his friends, they were like 6, 7, maybe. And we were having these hard conversations, but they
Yeah.
were fascinating. So they've been my guinea pigs all the way up. And so if they can handle it at that age, and I'm talking to them like they're just tiny humans, it doesn't matter what year they're starting at school, how we deliver the message looks, a little
Yeah.
different, but the message is the message, and the stuff that we're trying to teach the students and the kids, it doesn't have to be, oh, well, when they get in high school. The kind of stuff that I really kind of focus on is stuff that I think is important every section, that elementary,
Step
middle,
of the
or high
way.
school.
Yeah.
It's kind
Absolutely.
of that spiral, like you have to
Yeah.
keep hitting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the journey you went on because, working with, majority of high schoolers for your career, you moved to
Mhm.
Tennessee, and you're like, we're going to start from the ground up. And so that gave you a whole new perspective of what
It
was going
really
on.
did.
And so that brings us to,
Yeah.
your book, and I love it. It's called
Yes.
Square Peg: Learn to Stand Up and Be a Square Peg. And that's one of those things, because the square peg is usually the one that's, back when I was growing up, it's like you're the one that didn't fit in, and you're the one that, you know what I mean, and all this stuff. But you take a different approach with this. And so what inspired you to write this book, and how did you come up with that name, Cheryl?
Ironically, it's a perfect segue from what you just said. And it was from when I decided to take that step back and go down to the elementary and kind of
Okay.
learn about all these things that I was seeing in high school and wanting to see that, elementary to middle and the journey the students were going on. And when I was, I took a year off, I like took a sabbatical. I got into the elementary school. I was there so often that by October, the principal sat me down and she was like, do you want a part-time job? Like, because you're here every day. And I did. So I got a part-time job doing reading groups, and I was doing kids who were third through fifth grade.
Mhm.
And they were giving me reading groups where they may have been the accelerated reading group. So they were
Yeah.
reading, higher for their age, or the kids who were struggling. So I had, I'd run the gamut from high to low, third through fifth. And I was just thrown in to the reading classes and talking to kids. And half these students were, kids that my own kids were friends with. And so I knew
Yeah.
them, and I was able to have such relationships with them. When you're, oh, like you're so and so's mom, like right away, they tell you things like you don't need to know. Like we're best friends already, like right off the
Yeah.
bat. And so we had this opportunity to have such tight relationships that I was able to do so much with them in such a short amount of time, that I kind of fell in love with that age group. For now, I'll always be a high school teacher. My sarcasm is
Yeah.
definitely made for older kids in the classroom. But like at that point, like I really loved that third through like sixth, seventh grade,
Yeah.
where you're finding out what they can learn to read, and you're figuring out right then how to help them, how to close some of those gaps, how to have some of those hard conversations that are a little bit harder to have in high school when they've
Yeah.
been trained or they haven't been having them. So I really kind of fell in love with that age group, and I started writing a book that I felt that they needed. And it touched upon, social topics. It talked about social media in a positive and a negative way, because that's what they deal with every day.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I started it, and my son was in, gosh, he was in fourth grade, I think, at that point, and my daughter was in sixth grade. And I only recently finished it because that's what happens with life and kids. Like I started it and I
Yeah.
was all about it. And then I started just taking what that book was about and implementing it, into my jobs, but I kind of put that on the back burner. And as I'm watching, COVID hit and all of the needs to
Yeah.
have these topics, my friends were coming, can you help tutor my kid, in reading? And these are people who are affluent readers. They have resources, they are in their kids' lives, and they just didn't know the right questions to ask to help
Mm.
at home. And I decided to finish the book. Like it was something I really was
Yeah.
passionate about. So I kind of did
You
it.
got to get it done.
So yeah, so the book itself, there it
There
is.
it is, square peg.
But the book itself, and it's my favorite part that I made sure that was in there. The last 50-ish pages of the book, it's all a workbook.
Oh,
So for
awesome.
every chapter
So
of the
they
book,
can stay
there are
engaged
reading
and interactive.
comprehension.
Yes, I love that.
Absolutely. As a
Love that.
teacher, you have this and you've got your lesson where you can talk about, social and emotional needs. You can
Wow.
talk about a counseling journey with it. You can be a parent and say, okay, read chapter 1 and I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
And they don't have to get out paper or anything or,
There. Yeah.
journals. It is all built in. And as a parent, instead of the really easy question of hey, what are you reading? Or what'd you
Yeah.
read today? Or tell me what the chapter was about. And the kids give oh, it was fine. It was
Yeah.
short. The character did this and that was it. It gives very pointed questions and it hits all
Awesome.
the different
Awesome.
reading comprehension topics. And then as a teacher, it breaks it down where I can use this for progress monitoring. So it's a
Hmm.
tool I could see very easily, working in a school, but I also see I'm sitting at home with my own kiddo and I want them to get something out of the book they're reading. And it
Exactly.
hits so many things.
Yeah.
So
I
that
love.
was kind of my passion behind it was I need to give you all the things in one little
Yes.
book. Yeah.
I love that because it sounds like, when you gathered your children and their friends and started with that younger age group, it sounds like you just, out of that was birth. Okay, well, they need this, they need this, they need this. And so that's the beauty
Mhm.
of it. You didn't just pull this out of thin air. It's like you've got them there listening to them and through
Yeah.
your time with them. And it's like, okay, and I just like this thing was birth. And it's like, whoa, these are gonna be some tools and resources. And I definitely like anything that requires workbook because that's something as they're working through it, that's not okay, we're done, but I'm sure they will reference that throughout their life journey. That's something that you can always go back to. And when you hit a moment and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I remember we talked about that in this book here, let me go back and look at my notes and what did I write down. And so, and now I love also, Cheryl, I love the fact that you mentioned whether it's a teacher at school using that or a parent at home.
Mhm.
And that to me just that hits home with me because it's like, okay, as parents, it's like I want to be a part of educating my children. I want to be a part of making sure that their mental health is strong and where it needs to be. I want to be a part of making sure that, hey, we need to monitor the social media. We need to talk about that. How, things like
Yeah.
that. So that's a tool that's just universal. So I love that.
I
And
appreciate that. And so the reading part was where I started. And it's funny, you have a strong idea of what it's going to start as. And it
yeah,
was going to be a reading comprehension workbook. And that's what it was. And I was going to help kids read. And it really became a reading tool. But like I said, after COVID and,
yeah,
just all the different things that we were doing in life, it kind of became that social part. So
yeah.
every couple chapters, there's a full page where like you were saying, you can refer back. It has reflection, not
There you
reading
go. Yeah,
comprehension, but hey, you just read 4 chapters and this character had a lot going on and they were
yeah,
developing, they were growing, or they were going through a struggle. And it gives that reflection part.
yeah.
So you're also talking about as a parent or a teacher, however you're using it, someone at home, but you have that idea of having those harder conversations that
Mhm.
sometimes parents don't know, or whoever's at home doesn't know how to start that conversation.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, it's hard to start them sometimes if you
yeah,
haven't had them and you're like, well, how do I ask them about are they using social media appropriately
yeah.
or if they're feeling confident. And you asked about square peg, and I'll tell you the idea of it is really bullying in schools has been like my, heart
Mm,
passion project from the get-go. When I was in Illinois, we brought like Rachel's Challenge in and we did like,
yeah.
the Be Kind. Like it was just something that I've always been a part of. And I take very seriously. Like my poor
Yeah.
kids, like if a new kid comes to school, I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, like they have to ask them to eat lunch with them. And if they come home, they have to tell me like, tell me something about the new kid. Did you eat lunch with
They
them?
have to
And they would
engage.
know
They
because
have
I
to have,
never want that
yeah.
student
I
by
love
themselves.
it.
Yeah, they know the drill.
Yeah.
But the book really focused, there's so many books out there that talk about the student who's being bullied
Hmm.
or the student who is the bully and their journey. But I really wanted to focus on the bystander because unfortunately in today's day and age, it is really simple to get out your phone and record that fight or record
Yes.
the altercation or
Absolutely.
have a comment on someone's social media post
Yep.
where you think it's funny, but whatever's going on behind those closed doors, that
Yeah.
someone's being really affected. So the idea of a square peg is that you're different, just like you said
Different. Yeah.
before. You're standing out a little bit, but promoting that it's okay to have that courage and to be different and to stand out as you go through all the life lessons, in the book. It's really about it's all right to be different. That is actually what is going to make you great being that square and not,
Mm,
someone to stand out in a negative way. It shows her
yeah.
the
I love
courage.
that. I was going to ask you what makes this book so different and special. And you kind of already answered that because it's like, it's one of those things. It's like you said, okay, the topic of bullying, you're going to address it from the bystander. And, Cheryl, we've had those conversations with my children, and
Yeah.
it's like when, don't, the last thing you want to do is pull out your phone and record, like, but it's like,
But yet it's what they
what,
all do.
but
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's like, what can you do? Or what
Mhm.
could you have done to make that situation better? Or go up and be a friend there, go up and say something, And I think when students are reading that, they can, you talked about conversation starters at home. Sometimes it's hard, but when they can relate to something, then to me that's that igniter of that conversation. Oh, I know what she's going through,
Mhm.
and so boom, it opens up that, and then I love that because I think being able to talk to your students or your children, that's the difference maker right there, in anything, because
Thank
sometimes so
you.
many kids and students, they're closed off, they come home or whatever. Hey, how's it going? Okay, all right,
Okay.
you know,
It's fine. How's school?
fine.
Fine.
Yeah, real
Fine.
short answer. But to be able to dive into those conversations, without forcing them in this way, to me, it's almost like students reading that is like, we're not forcing that conversation now. It's two-way conversation. It's a dialogue, and they're kind of telling you their perspective and things like
And you
that.
can do it at home, however you want to. One of my best friends lives in Australia, and I sent, her kiddos the book and they're reading it together. So not just that reading comprehension tool of go ahead and read it, and I'm going to ask you those questions.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
reading it, and then they're going through the questions, and they're doing all that, but they're talking as they're reading. They're having those conversations. She's sitting down with her daughter and was like, okay. They're reading the chapter and they're having those conversations in real time where it's not so much read the chapter and tell me about it, or let's look at your answers you wrote, which
yeah,
is completely okay to do as
yeah.
well. But they've just decided, they're reading it chapter by chapter together.
Together.
And, there's no escaping the conversation there. It's just fluent. You stop whenever you stop, or you
Mm,
hear the inflection, when her daughter's reading, like, oh, like you can hear like the question of like, tell me more, like, has that happened? Or have you seen something like this? And you can kind of
yeah.
have that immediate conversation right there
Wow.
and then. And that's kind of a cool way to do it as well, if you
I
got the
love it. I
time.
love it. Now, Cheryl, you
Yeah.
started your company is called Educate, Aid,
Collaborate.
Collaborate. Educate, Aid,
Yep.
Collaborate. Now it's on the wall behind you, so you
It
got to tell us
is.
a little
See?
about that name. How'd you come up with that? And then we'll talk about what can Educate, Collaborate do for schools, anybody in the educational system, and what do you feel like it can do for them?
Absolutely. Thank you. So, educate, collaborate. Honestly, I got stuck on that eight when I was trying to think of my company name for a few reasons. Number one, like I said, I have had eight positions
Yeah,
all dealing in my career
I love
with
it.
student support. They have all been in the exact same genre, but yet as our world changes, more career paths are
Yeah.
being developed, RTI for academic, RTI 2B for the behavior. My last job in Williamson County was MTSS, which is multi-tiered system of support, kind of overseeing both of that. And it's just more things are being created because the need is there. So
Yeah.
I somehow ended up in 8 different roles, all serving the at-risk community of some shape or form.
Yeah.
And I love all of them. And when I went through, I figured out, I call it my CPR. And I know it sounds silly, but like as I was going through it, I kept writing these 3 words and I'm like, oh, if I put them in this order, it literally says CPR. And it's kind of so like my foundation is that communication, passion, and relationships.
There you go.
You got to communicate, and
Yep.
you have to have relationships to get anywhere in any of the positions that I've had. And then passion, like you said, I could talk forever, but I won't. But the idea kind of came really wanting to take that and focus on the
Yeah.
8 positions and how all of them come with educating, whether it's students or parents or community and teachers, but you can't do it without working together. So
Yeah.
the educate and
Absolutely.
collaborate really just fit that 8 right in there. And then the logo is kind of that infinity sign and it looks like an 8, but education, like you said, like, oh,
Yeah.
you just keep, having certificates and you keep doing this. You can't do a job like this without it always evolving, always learning. It's just kind of that infinity
Exactly.
part. Education is, there's no stopping. It's always
Yeah.
something and
Yeah.
it's all connected one way or the other. So I was really excited when I came up with that because although it's a little long, it fits everything that, I really believe in. And actually, as I was coming up with that, I don't know, you're going to laugh, but you were one of the people who inspired me when we were talking and you're like, have you ever like wrote down what you have done or, wanting to speak about it? That's when I actually wrote that book. So I wrote 2 and it took me 7 years to write the one, but then I wrote 2 in a year. And this is just kind of like a quick little journey and my 8 points. See how I did that?
There you go. There you
My
go. I
8
love it. I
essential
love it.
points. Yeah, my 8 essential points for all 8 jobs. So
Yeah.
it's like a quick read for any educator or anyone who's interested in that, but it really kind of focuses, if I'm getting down to helping students, what is it I really need to do to be successful? And I promise you, all 8 of them start something with communication and relationships because you both know, like we both know with what we do, if you don't
Yeah.
have either one of those,
Yeah.
you don't get any farther than that.
Exactly.
So I kind of did that. And so as far as services, my website is now up and running and I do a bunch of different things. So I'm just starting talking to schools, getting the book into schools, whether they're
Yeah.
using it, like we said, for a reading resource. Some counselors are looking at to use it for what they're doing in schools, or even just a teacher wants to pick it up for her class so she can use that as a,
Mhm.
um, their free time book, but it's, giving her all this information. It's giving her reading
Absolutely.
data and it's kind of covering that social, emotional or social and personal competency conversation. So I'm trying to get in that way, but I want to be in. I want to go in and, work with administration and teachers. I want to go in and speak to teachers. How can I help the schools? How can I help implement this? I will come in like I'm looking for school, like, can I buy X amount of books? I will come in and do like book studies and
Yeah.
be a part of implementing it into a school because I'm so passionate about what the topic actually is. Whether
Yeah.
you need me for that reading portion or the social part, like I'm ready to get involved, get communities involved, help in any way I can with that because I just want as many people to be able to use it. So
Yeah.
the services are anywhere from, the school districts to you've got 5 kids over the summer, you want to buy the book and you would like me to, facilitate 5 1-hour book clubs. Like I'm in. It's my favorite thing to do is get kids together and discuss books and teach them at the same time. They don't even know they're learning so much.
Exactly.
So it's
You're
kind of a
definitely,
plethora.
we can definitely feel your passion through this video.
Thank
I
you.
love it. And for the listeners out there that have come across this podcast, and if you're in that field of education, or somebody who is, or you are a parent and you're at your wits' end, and you want to you want to get your kids back on the right track, whatever that is, I believe this is going to be a great tool, great resource for you. Definitely, I love the part about the conversation starter. And even if you're a parent and you want to just get this and read it for yourself to see how you can implement this with your children, I just think that's a great start for you as well. And Cheryl, I think the thing I love about you and your passion, it's versatile. It's like because all schools are different. And it's like, with Cheryl, she's going to come in there and assess, not just come in when you need this, this, and this, but she will assess because once
Absolutely.
again,
Like you said, it
the
is
whole
so
career.
different.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
go in and
every
she's going
school
to
is so
assess what's
different.
going on and then write down some suggestions of what she feels like she can bring to the table and partner with you. That's why I love doing, these things with people. Like I'm all about the partnership. It's a two-way thing, we're not those people out there trying to just for a speaking gig or sell a book. No, it's a partnership because we believe in the words on this page and because it's come out of us in our experience. And so that's what you're going to get out of Cheryl. If you are that person in education, that's what you're going to get out of her. Partnership. If you're a parent, you're going to get the partnership.
You sure are.
Out of you, and I love that, and sure, you've done so great here on Zoom. I'm sure if there's a parent that's in a different state, you'd probably do some Zooms with them and their children.
You know what? You get really good at Zooms. Social emotional learning during COVID, it teaches you a lot.
Exactly. So Cheryl, listen, where can everybody go to find these books, The Square Peg and Educating All? Where can they go? Your website, let them know where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to see if this works. Can you see that?
Oh, I love that.
Look at that. That's the teacher in me. See? Yep. Educatecollaborate.com. Yep. And my email, if you want to ever just shoot me an email or ask me a question or see if I can help you do something, let me know. And I will be happy to reach out and tell you. I do want to let you know too, something like we were talking about community and so important, and giving back is a big deal for me. That I have it on the site, but I will just say, if you're going in with someone and you're buying more than 1 or 2 books, every person who comes in and buys 5, I donate 1 to Boys and Girls Club, either in Chattanooga or at Nashville. So anytime like there's a number of them being sold at one time, I will donate at least 1. I've been dropping off 2 or 3, but I'm a sucker. But every time someone does that, I make sure that if I'm in Nashville, I'm dropping it off there, or in Chattanooga right now, that we are working and I'm trying to pay it forward a little bit. Absolutely. So the book will keep, as you buy it, another one's going somewhere else as well.
Awesome. Cheryl, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking your time, sharing your passion and your heart with all the listeners out there. Thank you so much for being our guest on the podcast today, man.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
You're wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Hey, listen, listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to Next Steps to Better Days podcast. Listen, I want to strongly encourage you, especially when it's dealing with this next generation. I've got a passion for them as well. That runs alongside of Cheryl, what you're talking about. I do a lot of leadership with them and mindset, mentorship, coaching, and it's just a passion. You want to see this next generation thrive. And so if that's you out there, you're listening, listen, go to her website, grab a copy of her book. Even if you're not in the world of education, but people are, man, send them a copy of that and send them the link to this podcast as well, so they can hear Cheryl's story, hear her passion, and see how what she does can help the students that they are surrounded with, and maybe their children at home, whatever that is. Go to her website. She put it up there, and I'll put it in the tag as well. So go to her and stay encouraged out there, you listeners. Listen, once again, I'm always thrilled to be able to bring these podcasts to you guys. And for Next Steps to Better Days, we just want to keep moving forward, and we don't want to leave this next generation out. We want them to move forward as well. So, hey, listen, keep moving forward. I believe God has great things in store for you, and it's never too late to make your next days your best days. Peace out.